I'm glad you're here, because tonight we are diving into something the narcissist prays you never discover. There is a moment rare, terrifying, and almost supernatural when the empath finally snaps. Not yelling, not chaos, not revenge. Something far colder, far quieter, and when that silence arrives, the narcissist's world begins to fall apart piece by piece, because the one person they thought would absorb everything without breaking suddenly stops absorbing at all. You see, the empath doesn't explode the way a narcissist expects. They don't scream. They don't claw for attention. They don't beg. Their anger is the kind that rattles a narcissist's bones, because it isn't loud. It's decisive. When an empath reaches that breaking point, they don't fight the narcissist. They disconnect from them. And for someone who survives on emotional oxygen, that disconnection is the beginning of suffocation. Here's the part the narcissist never prepares for. They always assumed your kindness was weakness. They mistook your patience for dependency. They believed your forgiveness was automatic, endless, guaranteed. So when the empath finally withdraws their energy, the narcissist experiences something they cannot process, being invisible. And for a personality built entirely on attention, invisibility feels like death. The empath's anger is not like ordinary anger. It's clarity. It's the moment they finally see the narcissist for who they are. Without excuses, without fantasy, without the emotional fog the narcissist spent months, even years crafting. This kind of anger doesn't burn. It freezes. And the narcissist who thrives on chaos has no defense against someone who stops reacting completely. The question you've probably asked yourself is simple. Why does the empath's anger hit the narcissist harder than anyone else's? Because the empath is the only person the narcissist believed they completely controlled. Losing control over an empath is like losing gravity. It disrupts every psychological system the narcissist depends on to function. When an empath is angry, it's not a tantrum, it's a transformation. They stop cushioning the narcissist's ego. They stop explaining, stop accommodating, stop absorbing impact. Suddenly, the narcissist faces something they've avoided their entire life: accountability. And accountability to a narcissist is emotional torture, because it strips away the fantasy they built to protect their fragile identity. What the empath does next is what destroys the narcissist. They become emotionally unavailable, cold, unreachable. They stop feeding the narcissist's addiction to reactions. Every narcissist needs one thing to survive: your emotional response. Anger, love, fear, confusion, pain. Any reaction works. But silence is the one currency the narcissist cannot convert into power. This silence forces the narcissist into panic mode. They start replaying old messages, stalking your social media, interrogating mutual contacts, rehearsing conversations in their head. They become obsessed with understanding what changed in you, because they can feel the shift. Narcissists can sense when a supply source is slipping away, and nothing terrifies them more. The empath's anger turns the tables overnight. For the first time, the narcissist becomes the chaser. The one who reaches out. The one who sends long messages. The one who feels unbalanced. Their mind becomes consumed with one haunting question: what if I can't get them back? And that question is the beginning of their slow psychological collapse. So tonight, as we open this story, I want you to remember one thing: the empath's anger isn't destructive, it's liberating. It is the point where emotional gravity reverses, where the narcissist begins to crumble under the weight of their own manipulation, and where the empath finally steps into a power they never realized they had. Now let's break down exactly why that power terrifies the narcissist. The moment the empath withdraws, the narcissist's mind enters a spiral they can't control. They start obsessing over your silence, picking apart every detail of your last conversation, replaying moments where they sensed your tone shifting. Narcissists survive through emotional predictability. Yours. When that predictability disappears, their internal world becomes chaotic. Your absence becomes a psychological mirror, forcing them to face the parts of themselves they've spent a lifetime avoiding. See, narcissists depend on a loop: provoke, extract emotion, regain dominance. When the empath is angry but silent, the loop breaks. The narcissist can no longer regulate their emotions through you. That's when the panic sets. Their mind swings between grandiosity and insecurity, trying to rebuild a sense of control. They tell themselves you're overreacting, you're dramatic, you'll come back. But deep down, fear creeps in. because they know something has shifted in you. This fear is not about losing you as a person. It's about losing access to the emotional energy you provided. To the narcissist, your empathy was a resource, a steady source of validation, admiration, and emotional cushioning. Without that, their internal emptiness starts to expand. Most people feel sadness after conflict. Narcissists feel existential threat. Your silence forces them into a confrontation with the emptiness they work so hard to avoid. The empath's anger also triggers something primal in the narcissist: entitlement injury. They genuinely believe they own your emotional world. So when you pull back, they interpret it not as a response to their behavior, but as an attack, a challenge to their superiority. And challenges activate their survival instincts. The narcissist begins planning how to regain your energy, whether through guilt, charm, pity, or crisis. The narcissist's mind cannot tolerate ambiguity. They need to know what you feel, what you think, what you plan to do next. When you stop giving emotional cues, they start creating narratives. They imagine conversations, invent motives, fabricate scenarios, anything to fill the void. They convince themselves you're talking to someone else, that you've replaced them emotionally, that you're becoming stronger without them. These stories ignite their jealousy and paranoia. This paranoia isn't just emotional, it's physiological. Narcissists experience withdrawal symptoms when a primary empath stops feeding them energy. Their adrenaline spikes, sleep becomes fragmented, their thoughts race, they feel restless, irritated, unable to focus. It's the same pattern seen in behavioral addictions. You weren't just a partner or friend, you were their emotional regulation system, and now the system has collapsed. The narcissist then enters the justification phase. They mentally rewrite history to protect their ego. Suddenly, you're the villain. You're overly sensitive. You're ungrateful. You turned on them. This rewrite is their psychological armor. Without it, they'd have to admit the truth that your anger is justified, that their behavior caused the disconnect, that their control wasn't as strong as they believed. But even as they paint you as the antagonist, they can't stop thinking about you. Their mind keeps looping back to the same uncomfortable realization. You were the only one who consistently understood them, the only one who tolerated them, the only one who gave them emotional depth they couldn't generate themselves. They won't admit it out loud, but losing you feels like losing a limb. Yet the narcissist cannot process this loss in a healthy way. Instead, they swing between wanting to chase you and wanting to punish you. They stalk your activities silently, checking timestamps, analyzing your online presence, watching your movements. Your silence becomes their obsession. Narcissists don't miss people, they miss the control. And right now, they have none. And here's the darkest part. The empath's anger forces the narcissist to see something they never expected. Your power, your ability to detach, your ability to see through their manipulation, your ability to choose yourself. This realization wounds their ego more deeply than any insult or confrontation. Because if you can detach now, you can detach forever. And nothing terrifies a narcissist more. This is the moment everything changes. The empath's anger creates a shift the narcissist can't mentally stabilize. They expected you to react, to plead, to explain. But instead, you became unreadable. And when an empath becomes unreadable, the narcissist loses their map. Their entire strategy depended on predicting your emotions. Now they're navigating blind, and that loss of certainty feels like losing oxygen. The narcissist now begins testing the waters. Small messages, subtle bait, casual inquiries disguised as concern. Just checking in. Hope you're okay. These aren't acts of kindness. They're psychological probes. They want to measure how much control they still have. Every unanswered message increases their panic. Every hour of silence tightens the pressure around their ego like a noose. When the narcissist realizes you aren't responding the way you used to, they escalate. This is when you'll see sudden waves of emotion. First, charm telling you they miss you, reminding you of the good times. If that fails, guilt saying you're abandoning them, making you feel responsible for their pain. And if guilt doesn't work, they resort to fear, threats of walking away forever, accusations, anger. Every tactic is a desperate attempt to activate your empathy again. But the empath has changed. Something inside them has finally awakened. A deep understanding that love is not supposed to drain them. And this awakening is the narcissist's worst nightmare. Because once an empath reaches this clarity, they stop giving automatic emotional responses. They stop offering explanations to someone who never listened. They stop defending themselves against someone who never cared. The narcissist feels this shift instantly, like a psychic rupture. Now the narcissist enters a darker stage, self-doubt, not real self-reflection. Narcissists don't do that, but a fear-based questioning of their own power. They start wondering, did I push too far? Did I miscalculate? Have they finally figured me out? This internal fear is unbearable, because it cracks the illusion of superiority they built around themselves. Losing power over an empath is proof their manipulation isn't invincible. The narcissist then undergoes what psychologists call ego destabilization. Their identity was built on being adored, feared, or obeyed, never ignored. Your silence exposes their deepest insecurity that without control, they are nothing. No identity, no stability, no emotional foundation. This internal collapse feels like standing in a room full of mirrors that suddenly stop reflecting them. They look, but nothing looks back. This is where the narcissist becomes unpredictable. They may suddenly show up, attempt major gestures, or create manufactured crises to draw you in. They may claim they're sick, depressed, overwhelmed, or lost. Not because these things are true, but because they know empaths respond to suffering. They weaponize vulnerability to pull you back. But this time, the empath sees the pattern clearly. The empath's anger becomes a filter that strips away illusion. They remember the lies, the gaslighting, the emotional extraction masquerading as love. They begin recognizing every manipulation tactic for what it is. And when an empath sees the truth without emotional fog, the narcissist loses the ability to anchor themselves in your mind. Their influence dissolves. This terrifies them more than rejection itself. The narcissist now feels the weight of something they never expected: irreversibility. They sense you slipping beyond the reach of their manipulation. They sense your heart no longer bending toward their chaos. They sense that their old formulas no longer work. And for a narcissist, losing psychological influence feels like losing the ground beneath their feet. This chapter ends with a psychological reality the narcissist never imagined. They are no longer the center of your emotional universe. And once the empath's mind detaches, the narcissist faces a devastating truth. They no longer have a way back in. This turning point marks the beginning of the narcissist's unraveling, and their suffering has only just begun. This is where the narcissist begins to crumble. The anger of an empath doesn't explode outward. It sinks inward, becoming a silent force the narcissist can't measure or predict. That silence terrifies them. They replay old conversations, dig through screenshots, analyze your last words, desperately searching for clues. They're not looking for closure, they're hunting for weaknesses, trying to understand where they lost their grip. The narcissist now enters the phase of panic-driven fantasizing. They start imagining you getting stronger, calmer, happier without them, and nothing injures their ego more than the thought of you healing from the very wounds they caused. They believed you would always stay emotionally dependent, always searching for their approval. But when you start rebuilding your life, it forces them to confront a truth they cannot bear. Their power over you was temporary. As your silence grows louder, the narcissist becomes consumed by the fear of replacement. They wonder who is comforting you, who is listening to you, who is witnessing your growth. In their mind, someone else has taken their throne. Their ego spirals. Because narcissists believe only one person should define your emotional world, and that person must be them. The idea that you've moved on is psychologically unbearable. This is when the narcissist shifts into image repair mode. They try to rewrite the story, telling mutual friends that they were the victim, that you are unstable, that they tried everything. This isn't about truth, it's about controlling the narrative. If they can't control you anymore, they will try to control how others see the situation. It's a desperate attempt to preserve the illusion of superiority. But the more they try to regain control, the more unhinged they become. Your calmness exposes their chaos. Your strength exposes their fragility. Your indifference exposes their dependence. And this imbalance triggers their most unstable behaviors. They may lash out, guilt trip, threaten, stalk, or manipulate, all driven by fear, not power. A narcissist's rage is never about you. It's about their collapsing identity. Now comes the phase that destroys them most, self-comparison. They compare the version of you with them to the version of you without them. And the difference is humiliating. You were anxious, confused, drained. Now you're grounded, stable, present. They never expected you to rise. They never believed you would. And seeing you become the person they tried to break is an emotional wound they can't heal. As your life improves, the narcissist begins spiraling into resentment. They resent your peace, your silence, your self-respect. They resent that you're no longer easy to manipulate. They resent that the person they underestimated became the person they can't forget. This resentment eats at them slowly, like rust corroding metal. Every reminder of you becomes a reminder of their failure. They also begin projecting your strength onto every new relationship. Suddenly, no one compares to you. No one reacts the way you did. No one forgives the way you forgave. No one loves with the depth you once offered freely. The narcissist realizes they lost someone irreplaceable, not because they valued you, but because no one else tolerates the emotional chaos they normalize. The consequences intensify when they finally see you emotionally untouchable. They may try one last tactic, pretending they're healed, pretending they've grown, pretending they finally understand. This is not transformation, it's strategy. A narcissist never seeks self-improvement. They seek re-entry, and when they realize even this tactic fails, their inner collapse deepens into something darker, despair. By now, the narcissist is left with a haunting truth they never expected to face. You were the emotional anchor they counted on, the stability they exploited, the heart they drained. And once the empath cuts that cord, the narcissist loses their emotional compass entirely. Their life becomes a maze with no exit, a collapse they cannot undo, no matter how desperately they try. Here is where everything shifts. Not for the narcissist, but for you. Because while their world spirals into confusion and fear, yours begins to stabilize in a way you never thought possible. The anger you once felt isn't chaos anymore. It becomes clarity. It becomes a quiet, grounded awareness of what really happened. For the first time, you see the narcissist not as a monster or a mystery, but as a deeply broken person who fed on your light because they had none of their own. As you heal, you start realizing something they never expected. Your anger wasn't destruction. It was awakening. It forced you to confront the illusion you were living in. You began recognizing the patterns, the manipulation, the subtle psychological hooks. This awareness becomes your armor, making you immune to the very tactics that once controlled you. And nothing terrifies a narcissist more than a person they can no longer confuse. Your growth forces them into a painful confrontation with themselves. They may try to deny it, mask it, or hide behind new distractions, but the truth lingers. You were the one person who offered them something real, patience, empathy, devotion, and they wasted it. This realization becomes a psychological wound they can't numb. Narcissists don't fear losing people, they fear losing power, and you took back every piece of power they stole. Your detachment becomes their punishment, not because you intended to hurt them, but because peace is something they cannot handle. Your silence is louder than any argument. Your distance is sharper than any insult. Your healing is a mirror they cannot look into without feeling the full weight of their own emptiness. That's the true consequence of an empath's anger, not revenge, but evolution. You might notice over time that you don't even feel the need to hate them anymore. The emotions that once consumed you slowly dissolve into understanding, not sympathy, just clarity. You see them as someone trapped in their own psychological cage, repeating the same cycles with new people, never escaping the emotional emptiness that defines them. Meanwhile, you move forward with a life built on real connection. And here's the deepest truth. The narcissist never expected you to heal. They counted on your loyalty, your softness, your willingness to forgive. They assumed you would return like you always did, but something changed in you. The anger broke the spell. The moment you finally saw them clearly was the moment their influence died. That shift created a psychological earthquake they will feel for years. Your healing disrupts their story. Narcissists need to believe they were the best thing that ever happened to you. It comforts their ego. It protects their fragile identity. But when you rise, when you thrive, when you become stronger than you ever were with them, you shatter that fantasy completely. And this is the nightmare they can't outrun. Your success becomes the story they cannot rewrite. As time passes, you notice that your world expands while theirs contracts. Your relationships deepen. Your mind becomes clearer. Your boundaries stronger. Their world remains stuck in repetition, trapped in the same shallow connections. the same emotional games, the same hollow victories. Your evolution becomes a living reminder that healing is possible, and that they chose not to change. And eventually the final truth sets in. You were never the one who needed them. They were the one who needed you. They needed your stability, your heart, your empathy, your forgiveness. They needed the emotional warmth they could not generate within themselves. When you walked away, you didn't just leave. They lost the one source of genuine connection they may ever experience. That loss becomes their lifelong burden. So here is your closing truth, the one you take with you as you step into your next chapter. An empath's anger is not the end. It is the beginning. It is the moment you reclaim everything they tried to take. It is the moment you rise from confusion into clarity, from pain into power. And while the narcissist remains haunted by the echo of what they lost, you move forward untouched, unbroken, and finally free.